go? Okay. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Is everybody ready to get started? If you would please grab a seat, we're ready to get started. I'm gonna clap like a teacher. Is it? Can y'all hear me?
We can now.
Yeah. My clapping like a teacher worked, I guess. Yeah. All right, we have a few more seats up here if y'all want to sit down, but y'all don't have to. Hello, welcome. Well, good morning, everyone. Before we get to the presentations this morning, I want to see if I have any of my fellow council members here. I don't see them, but I do want to recognize some members of our city management here. We have our wonderful city manager right here, Mark Israelson, our deputy city manager in the back here, Jack Carr, our deputy city manager, Shelley Seamer, and then we have several other members that are going to be speaking to us later. I see our fire chief right here, Chief Biggerstaff. So we know that y'all are going to have lots of questions, and so we'd love for you to hold your questions to the end. We'll make sure there's time for y'all to ask all of your questions. First up this morning, we have our Director of Engineering. Oh, by the way, my name's Casey Prince. I'm the Mayor Pro Tem. Sorry, I didn't say that. So yes, I have the privilege of being your Mayor Pro Tem, and I'm very happy to be here with you today. So first up this morning, we have our Director of Engineering, Caleb Thornhill, and our Director of Public Works, Dan Prendergast, and they're going to provide some updates on something I know everybody's interested in, and that is our road construction projects in Plano. So, Caleb and Dan, take it away.
Good morning. My name is Dan Prendergast, Director of Public Works, here to give you a quick overview of our major street construction projects and also some projects coming up in next year's CIP. Before I do that, I want to go through some history of our funding for our major streets. In 2021, the citizens passed the bond program, which authorized $100 million to repair and overlay our major street network. That $100 million takes care of about 50 miles of our 200-mile total network of our major streets. The map that you see here in the center is a map of the condition of our streets that was taken before the bond program. The streets color-coded in orange are D grade, yellow C, light green B, and dark green A. And we do use condition as a major driver of where we go, and I'll talk more about that here in a slide or two. On the right side, you see Jupiter Road. This was our latest overlay that was done last year, and that's basically right after the overlay went down, and we are expanding that program to many more streets, as you will see on the next slide. This slide here gives an overview of our entire street program and kind of where we've been, where we are, and where we're going. The streets in gray that you see have been overlaid. Windhaven Parkway on the west side was done last year. Parker Road in the central part of town was done last year as well. Then we have Independence Parkway, the north-south street. That was our first overlay that we ever did about 5 years ago. That was a test section that we tested, which is why there's a big gap between when that one was done and when these other ones happened as well. On the east side, you got Jupiter Road, which is the one I mentioned on the previous slide, and that was completed late last year. So several projects have been done already. Currently in yellow, these are projects that are about to begin overlays. And so we've got Legacy Drive in the central part of town from Custer to 75. That is undergoing final concrete repairs before an overlay begins in the next week or two. Then you've got Plano Parkway on the southwest corner of town. That is also undergoing final concrete repairs before that overlay begins in about 2 to 3 weeks. And then finally, we've got Coit Road, where final concrete touch-ups just started, I believe, last week, and that overlay is expected to happen in September and last through October. So that's about 11 miles of overlay that we're about to put down in the next 2 months. The overlay is done with night work on these streets because there's so much traffic, you just can't do it during the day. So you won't see a major disruption to traffic when they start doing the overlay work. The orange streets here are streets that we've either started or are about to start concrete repairs for future overlays. So if you look in the center, there is Parker Road, and we have east and west. We did 2 separate projects to get them done faster. That project has started construction, and the contractors are working on the outskirts of town towards the inside there. So both the west side and east side there, you may see some lane closures. Also on the southeast side of town is Plano Parkway. This is one that we've wanted to get going for quite a while now. and we had to wait for some other projects to kind of get out of the way. That project is under construction on the east side of town as well, and that's moving west, so you may see some lane closures there. Then you've got Hedgecoats Road in the north part of town, the east-west road there. That road, we had the pre-construction conference a couple weeks ago, so you should see construction begin on that road as well very soon. And then finally, Independence Parkway. This one is in design. It should bid in the next couple of weeks, and you should see construction begin on Independence Parkway in about 3 months. And that's intentional because we don't want to have two major streets under construction at the same time. So Coit needs to finish before Independence begins. And then finally, on this map, you've got Parkwood Boulevard that's parallel to DNT. That is a project that we repaired the concrete last year and now need to put the overlay on that as well. So a lot of work going on throughout the city. I want to talk about project prioritization. Condition's big, but we also have to watch out for other projects as well and be able to sequence these things so we're not overburdening one area of the city. And we also want to get full coverage of the city. You see here we've got road projects, north, south, east, and west, to make sure everybody gets to experience the overlay as well. So that's really the theme of our road projects. And I guess we're going to wait till questions at the end, so I'll pass it over to Caleb.
There's too much electronics up here. All right, good morning. Caleb Thornhill, Director of Engineering for the City of Plano. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what we have active. I'll talk briefly on just an overview. So I've got a couple slides here. We're actually going to see these again on Monday night. We present these to council, but just to give you an idea of how busy we are in engineering, we've got 97 active projects, which is the most we've had since I've been here. Now, that's a little misleading from a standpoint of that's not 97 active construction projects. That's various states of design, studies. Some of those are drainage, so you won't see 97 projects, although it may feel like it. The types of projects we do, the big ones I'm going to talk about is the intersection capacity improvements. Those are the big intersection arterial projects that we do. And then Dan talked about the arterial maintenance. We also do residential collector streets, so if it's not in your neighborhood, you may not feel the burden, but we do hear it quite often about streets being closed in residentials. You know, if we're doing a street repair or a replacement or water line or a sewer. And then, of course, alleys, screening walls. You may see some lane closures on some of the larger arterials for screening walls. And then signal and transportation improvements. What I wanted to do, and there's a link down there at the bottom, and I'll give you a minute if you'd like to write it down. It's on our engineering website. We have all of our active projects on a GIS map. You can go to that map, you can type in your address, it'll take you to where you live or where you're concerned about. It'll show you all the active projects. The various colors are depending on what the project it is, if it's a road construction, if it's a water line project, if it's a sewer line project. You'll see some of them are dashed, some of them are solid. That's going to tell you whether it's in design or whether it's in construction. On our engineering website, we also have a road closure report, and it ties directly into Waze. So if you do use Waze, if you're one of those users, our closures get uploaded to Waze. So we try to get that updated on a weekly basis, and that also ties in our development projects. So while it's not the City of Plano's construction, if a new CVS, a new Walgreens, a new Legacy West is coming in, there's closures on our roads, we'll update that report on a weekly basis. Again, it goes into Waze. So I would really encourage you to look at this website if you have a particular area you're concerned about. It's going to be the most active or accurate information about the projects in your area. From a timeline, one of the big questions we always get is why does it take so long to get a project constructed? We'll get a call from somebody saying the road's falling apart or my alley's falling apart, and then we'll get a call 2 months later and say, you guys aren't out here yet. And typically what we'll do is we'll work directly with Dan in Public Works. We'll get those projects prioritized because while we may get a call from you guys or a citizen about a particular location, we get those calls all throughout the city. And if it requires design, there is a process we have to go through. We have to select a consultant. We have to take that to council. We've got to design it for 6 to 8 months. So it's not an immediate process, but it is started. So we go through that process. We go through the design. We have to bid and construct it. So a typical project will last us anywhere from 2 to 3 years, depending on the complexity of it. So we may be working on it, but you may not see some activity for 18 or so months before we actually are out there with the construction equipment. One of the big projects that we have going on, and I know that it's on the east side of town, but it's the biggest project that I've been involved in. I've been with the city for 8 years, is the Shiloh Road expansion. If you're familiar with that area, it's an existing 2-lane, but it's been on our thoroughfare plan for a 4-lane road. If you're familiar with the Silver Line, darts coming in, the traffic's increased. You know, Murphy, Wiley, everybody else to the east is exploding, and it's just, we've reached a point from a traffic standpoint, it's time to go ahead and meet the thoroughfare plan map and go ahead and widen that road. So that widening will be from 14th up to Parker. And be adding 2 additional lanes, so you'll have 2 south and 2 north. We've got to widen a bridge, we've got new drainage, we've got new water. So right now it's a $15 million project. They just started construction in the last couple of months. We anticipate that somewhere around an 18-month time frame. The good thing is we have 2 functional lanes right now, so from a road closure, traffic control standpoint, we hope that the disruption is going to be minimal, but we're very excited about that. And before you ask, why aren't you going all the way to Spring Creek, that is going to be even a more challenging task to go further north from here. It's adjacent to a park. We've got overhead transmission lines, and so once we get done with this project, we'll evaluate extending that to the north for this project, or for this location. So the intersection improvement projects, I talked about this. This is probably what you see the most from an impact if you're driving around the city. Here is a really brief list of the locations that we're working on. And to see it even better, you can see all the dots, and like Dan said earlier, we do them everywhere. The blue is projects that are active, that are either in construction, hopefully wrapping up soon. The red is what we anticipate to come online next year, or this next fiscal year, so starting sometime this fall. These projects are usually either due to congestion or a safety concern is the main reason we do these projects. This is where we come in, we add an additional left turn lane, we'll add an additional right turn lane to get traffic moving through there to be a safer intersection. These are probably our most challenging projects in engineering. If you're familiar with any of our major intersections, we've got businesses at all 4 corners, we've got street lights, we've got signal poles, we've got utility lines. All that stuff has to be coordinated, all of it has to be relocated. We typically have acquisition that has to occur. And what we're seeing now, and I'm sure all of you guys have heard, we're seeing material shortages across the board. It's for concrete, it's for pipe, it's for fire hydrants, for chips, it's for labor, it's for whatever it is. So when you see an intersection and there's cones out there and there's nobody working, sometimes it's related to one of these items. We're waiting for a utility pole to be relocated. We're waiting for a street light to be relocated. And so it's been a challenge. And again, these create our biggest struggles because these affect so many people when they're at an intersection like this. So we try to take every precaution. We coordinate early with our utility companies. We don't start construction until all of our acquisitions have occurred. We try to do everything we can to get these prepared, but lo and behold, we'll start digging and there's a mystery line and nobody knows what it is and nobody claims it, and you know, we have to find a way to mitigate that. So these are our biggest challenges. Last project, this is one that you guys will likely never see unless you're just really curious. But the Colin Creek Mall, if you're not familiar, there is a large waterway that runs underneath the parking lot. And if you're familiar, you probably heard the redevelopment over there. The reason I put this one up in is just so cool. It was an existing corrugated metal pipe, or 3 pipes, 30 feet wide, 15 feet tall, to carry that waterway, Spring Creek, through there. And we have to reline that. That was put in the early 80s with the mall development. And it's reached its end of life, and we are basically putting in a 14-inch concrete shell. And I talked about the Shiloh Road project earlier, the $15 million project. This is the biggest project I have done, and it may be for Plano from the engineering standpoint, $23 million. It's over 1.5 miles of a 14-inch liner through all 3 of those tunnels. So we have started that process. You can see here, this is a picture from a few weeks ago. They've got to put in the metal cage or the rebar, and then they'll put the shotcrete on top of that. And we're very excited, but we're really hoping to get this done as soon as we can. And I think that's it for me, and I'll turn it over.
Thank you, Dan. And thank you, Caleb, for that information. I know nobody here has been inconvenienced by our road work, but I know that we'll all be glad when we get these projects done, especially the intersection capacity improvements. But we thank you for your patience going through our intersections and on our roads while we do the work, but it's important that we get it done, and I hope that you're enjoying the overlays that we have done. I know that I am, and I've gotten a lot of good feedback from citizens who have driven on those. So next, we get to hear from Senior Environmental Education Outreach Specialist Jamie Bretzman with information about a new food compost program. Jamie?
Good morning. My name is Jamie Bretzman. I'm in the Sustainability and Environmental Education Division, and I'm really excited to be able to tell you about a new pilot program that we're going to be rolling out this fall, covered mostly by funds from the North Central Texas Council of Governments and TCEQ, or Texas Commission on Environmental Quality Grants. So this is a really exciting program. I'm really excited to tell you about it. So I only have about 5 minutes this morning to hit on the very highlights of the program, but at the end of my presentation, I'll give you some contact information where you can find out more going forward. But our compost program is going to be for residential food scraps. It's going to be a drop-off style program. And one really exciting thing about this program is that it will allow people to compost not only the materials that you find in your typical backyard compost pile, fruit and veggie scraps, but also cooked meats, bones, nuts and nutshells, dairy, eggs and eggshells. So we're hoping to extend our outreach for composting in general, but also for people who already do composting at home, who want to be able to extend the types of materials that they can compost at home. It'll be strategically located throughout the city, and we're currently working with other departments in the city to place these at some public locations, either with our libraries or with our parks, and we're currently in discussions on what those locations will be. The goal is to have those all throughout the city to offer equitable access to composting to residents who live not only in single-family homes, but also in multi-family type homes. So we'll have the ability to collect food scraps at home, drop those off 24/7 at any one of these public locations, and we're going to be hiring or contracting with a compost hauler to collect those food scraps and transport those to a local commercial composter for composting. Now, since it is a pilot, we're going to be starting with 500 participants, and the goal is to see how it goes, to see what the level of interest is, what the level of, in different locations in the city, participation. We're going to be looking at demographics to see sort of what the uptake of the program is. And the program goal is really to increase diversion from the landfill. The landfill lifespan is decreasing more quickly than is planned. As secondary benefits, we have food scraps that are being hauled to Melissa, so we have additional emissions from the hauling of the trucking up to Melissa, additional traffic on the highways from the large trucks. So there is the primary benefit of reducing what's going to the landfill and increasing the lifespan of the landfill, but also secondary benefits with regard to air quality. We also we're working on outreach for our residents on food waste prevention, food waste reduction, and just composting in general. So throughout the program, we'll be checking in with all of the program participants, offering ongoing education about composting, about the impact that they're able to make by participating in the program. And then at the end of the program, we're going to do a full post-mortem on the program, look at who participated, the levels of contamination that we saw, and guide future city initiatives for waste reduction. So it's really an opportunity for residents of Plano to show us that they're interested in this, if they are indeed interested in it, and then guide where we might go from there afterwards. So this is an example of the materials that will be issued to subscribers when they join the program. They'll receive a small countertop bucket that can either go on the countertop or in the refrigerator, and a larger bucket for collecting in between trips to the drop-off location, and very clear instructions on what can and can't be composted. The goal is to have very clear messaging to reduce contamination and to increase the success of the program. So this is what the homeowner or resident would receive. And these are the collection site examples. You may notice that these are labeled for Fort Worth. We have been working with them to build on the success that they have seen with their program in Fort Worth. They started out very similar to we did with a grant from the COG and from the TCQ, and it's become a permanent program for them. So we've really had a good opportunity to learn from their successes and their challenges and build our program based on that information. So the carts at the public locations look much like your carts at home for your recycling or for your trash, with the exception that they will be padlocked so that we can prevent contamination or just people using it as a trash can. And then for some additional information, today I was just able to hit some of the high points. We are still working out some of the details of the program, but I will be hosting a webinar on September 13th. And if you want to grab the QR code there's a sign up for getting some additional information about the program, and through that link you'll also get an invitation to that webinar. You can also reach out directly to me at foodcomposting@plano.gov, and that will come straight to me. And I'll also be speaking at the Neighborhood Services Best Break on August 17th, and we'll be talking in greater detail about the food composting program, and then also some other big exciting events that SEED has coming up in the fall, including our solar co-op, our tree giveaway, and Texas Recycles Day. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Jamie, for telling us about that new program. That sounds exciting. I was just shocked that there's people who are throwing away meat, because at my house with 3 boys, there is never any meat going in the trash. It is always eaten. All right, you've heard a lot of information recently from the city about residential water. So next we're going to have our Senior Environmental Education Outreach Specialist, Katie Walker, tell us a little bit about the information about how important it is for us to conserve water. Katie?
All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Katie Walker. It's a pleasure to be here with you this morning. I'm going to talk about 5 ways to use water wisely, and I'm also going to share some resources that can help you achieve that. But first, a little bit of backstory on why this is so important, especially right now. As of this morning, our primary drinking water source, which is Lavon Lake, is at about 83% full. This is pretty good, considering that we have endured a very hot and dry summer. Experience shows, though, that we will not always be so lucky. If you think back to 2011 all the way through mid-2015, we were in quite a severe drought. And if you look a little bit deeper, right now, we are indeed in a severe drought in Colin County and throughout the rest of Texas as far as soil moisture. So because it's been so hot and dry, it's incumbent upon us to be very careful of protecting our most precious shared resource. Sadly and shockingly, as much as half of the water that we use outdoors is wasted due to inefficient watering methods and systems, or parts and practices, as I say. Some of those include watering at the wrong time. So if you can see, that clock says just shortly after noon. So watering at times when it's hot, when it's windy, when you're more likely to lose your water to evaporation. Watering for too long, such that the soil simply can't absorb that water and it runs off into the street and into our storm drains. And finally, watering with broken sprinkler heads. This is one that I saw at my former residence as part of an HOA, and I felt really bad for that HOA because they'd be paying that bill. And if you can see, the very fine print in the bottom right says that in 6 months, or an irrigation season, one broken sprinkler head alone can waste 25,000 gallons. So add that up, and that gets very, very expensive, not to mention the wasted water. So the 5 practices, or 5 ways that you can water more wisely, are to only water when necessary and to only water on your designated watering days, to water before 10 a.m. and after 6 p.m., to reduce your runoff by watering in shorter cycles, and to direct spray onto the landscape as opposed to our hardscapes, and finally to regularly inspect your irrigation system. So for the top 2, this is pretty easy to follow along with. Just note that watering between the hours of 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. this time of year are strictly prohibited. And then your designated watering days, whether or not you are a resident or an HOA common area, are designated by the last digit of your address. So if your address ends in an even number, then Mondays and or Thursdays are your watering days. And if it ends in an odd number, then Tuesdays and or Fridays. And I say and or because that's dependent upon the weather. If we have rain in our forecast, then you may not need to water on both of those days. Hopefully we'll get some rain here in the near future. Also want to note that, again, HOAs follow the even schedule. So if you have common areas that you're managing, please ensure that those common areas are only running on Mondays and or Thursdays. So I have some resources and just some helpful hints for those other the other 3 ways that we can save water. So the best time of day to water is the early morning hours before sunrise, probably those 2 or so hours before the sun comes up. This is when there is less of a demand on the water supply and the water pressure, because folks aren't trying to get up and take their showers and run the sprinklers at the same time. Also, you're less likely, again, to lose that water to evaporation. And finally, plants that stay wet all night long can be more susceptible to fungal diseases if those pathogens are in the area. So we really don't want to run sprinklers and get that plant material wet at the beginning of the nighttime or in the evening. We want them to be able to dry out in good time. So an awesome resource that can help you know when to water and when to wait, and more importantly, know how much to water, is watermyyard.org. And I would encourage you to sign up for this both as a resident and as a manager of HOA common areas. When you sign up or download the app, you will get a weekly email. This is an email that I actually received for this week. And it tells me how much water is needed in terms of inches, but it also tells me that in terms of minutes. Now, in a moment, I'm going to show you how I really cannot run my sprinklers for 76 minutes straight. That would be disastrous. But this is a helpful resource that can help you break up those waterings into shorter cycles to allow for absorption. The problem, though, with our native soil is that it complicates things. It can only absorb about 1/8 of an inch in an hour. So we really can't water longer than it takes our sprinklers to apply that much water. So your traditional spray heads that pop up and emit the same pattern the whole time that they're on, they deliver that 1/8 of an inch in about 6 to 8 minutes. Rotor heads that pop up and then turn in a certain pattern that you set, they deliver that 1/8 of an inch in 10 to 15 minutes. So our cycles shouldn't be longer than that because our soil simply can't absorb it. So a great method that you can use is called the cycle and soak method. Hopefully you've heard this terminology before. Really all it means is that we're splitting the total irrigation time into multiple parts to maximize that absorption. So the numbers that you see aren't a rule of thumb. This is an example. If you had a spray head, you could cycle it for 8 minutes, give that zone an hour for absorption, and then repeat as many times as necessary given the watering recommendation for that week. So if you need a ½ an inch and you know how long it takes your zone to apply ½ an inch of water, then you would break that into those multiple cycles, allowing for absorption in between. So we really want to help you with this, and that's why we have an online learning module called Water Everywhere, a guide to sprinkler repair. This can be found at plano.gov/modules, along with other sustainability-related learning tools. And when you access this module, it's almost a gamified means of learning how to make sprinkler repairs. There's a whole section dedicated to the cycle and soak method that you can practice before you go out to your irrigation controller. So as you can see, there's an imaginary sprinkler controller here that you are waiting to see how long it takes for those zones to fill up with water, and then counting the minutes and turning off the system in between. So it really helps you practice this method. There's also a worksheet that you can download from the module as you go outside and do this to your own irrigation system. There it is, right there. All right. Also on the module, it helps you spot common irrigation problems like damaged sprinkler heads, clogged nozzles or filters, and incorrect spray patterns. So if I were to click incorrect spray pattern, it would take me to a section that shows how to identify that problem. For example, it's spraying the fence rather than the turf. It would take me to a section then on what supplies I would need to fix that problem based on the type of sprinkler head I was addressing. And finally, it would show me a how to fix video based on that sprinkler. So again, a very valuable tool that can help you as residents and for your HOA common areas. But it's important to keep in mind that all seasons are not equal. They're not the same, so we need to budget our water use, especially as we begin approaching fall. There is a seasonal adjust feature on most traditional sprinkler controllers that can help make this very easy. And you may have heard that our mayor has called on us to reduce our run times per zone by 2 minutes each. Rather than manually going in and adjusting those zones, you can use the seasonal adjust feature, and I'll show you why that works in a moment. But here's another great rule of thumb. When the average temperature is 50 degrees, we need about 50% of the run time. When the average temperature is 100 degrees, we need, of course, 100% of the run time. And finally, when the average temperature coming this fall is around 70% of the run time. So addressing our water use based on the season. Well, what does this mean? Well, we can set a base schedule based on applying 1 inch of water in a given week. The seasonal adjust feature then adjusts all zones by a percentage of what's needed. So you, again, don't have to go in and do that manually. As an example, if you needed to apply 1/4 of an inch this week, then your watering is 3/4 or 75% less than your 1 inch. So you would set seasonal adjust to 25%, which means all of your zones would then be adjusted. So this might be the easiest, most efficient way for you to go in and reduce those run times for all of your zones by those 2 minutes or even more if necessary. But if you take nothing else away, please remember not to set the controllers and forget about them. They really do take your regular engagement based on the weather, based on the season, and there's a lot of new technologies that make this so much easier. Rather than having to go to the controller, you can actually manage your irrigation from your smartphone with smart controllers these days. We also encourage you to know your water flow. Please do study this month-to-month comparison, both for your home and for your common areas, so that you're able to spike any trends in your water use and quickly note anything out of the ordinary. Please also read these valuable messages on a monthly basis. You can see conservation tips, incentive programs, anything important that we think you should know about water and sustainability. But if you want more information than that, then you can view that online at your leisure. you can visit ecop.plano.gov/CUS, and this will take you to the Customer and Utility Services homepage, where you can log in using your water account. So this is what you'd see. You'd click the login button. And once you've created your online account for your utility, you would then see what's similar to your monthly bill, a chart showing your monthly water use, but then you can also see these hourly water meter reads. This is especially important if you suspect a problem or you just really want to get in the know about your water use. So I would suggest clicking View More Reads, where you can then see changes from hour to hour. I want to direct your attention to the last column on the right that says Change. When you see zeros, that indicates that no water is running through that meter, which would also indicate that your sprinklers aren't running, that you don't have a leak. There are a lot of things that you can deduce from this information. This is from my home, and what I notice is that between 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on, there's zero water use. We're at work. But as the evening approaches, you can see that meter start to turn. So I go in here and I make sure that we have no leaks. I can also go in here and see how many gallons my sprinklers are using on an hourly basis. Very valuable information to get ahead of any high water bills. But at the end of the day, if you do note any unusual spikes or trends in your water use that are of concern to you, please don't hesitate to call Customer and Utility Services. I have their number listed. They can walk you through that online portal of your water use and help you determine if there is indeed a problem before those high bills arrive. They also have leak credits that can give you money back for some of the water that you lost. We also recommend that all irrigation systems have a rain and freeze sensor. This is an easy add-on device that shuts off sprinklers if they happen to be scheduled to run when it's raining or freezing. And any residents can earn a rebate for the first time installation of one of these. At plano.gov/rebates, you can learn more. Now, I mentioned those smart controllers that you manage from your phone. Those also can go for the rebate in lieu of the traditional rain and freeze sensor. We don't advertise this because we want to have that engagement with the public, but if you're interested in installing a smart irrigation controller, please get my contact information at the end, and I'd love to talk to you about it. Irrigation in the state of Texas is licensed by the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. That is to protect the potable water supply and also to ensure water conservation and efficiency. So if after all this, you as a resident or an HOA manager are still looking for an irrigation contractor, we recommend going to dallasia.org. And they have a Locate a Contractor page where you can find a licensed professional in our area to do what you need to have done that you don't feel comfortable doing yourself, and know that that irrigation professional is licensed to do so. So I just wanted to put this up here once again for your reference, but I also printed handouts that you're welcome to have. Please come see me when we wrap up. I'll be happy to share these with you. And if you have any other questions that are water conservation or water quality related, please don't hesitate to reach out to me at my email address. These are web pages for our other upcoming sustainability programs. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Katie. That was a lot of really practical and helpful information. I know I learned a lot. And I know that at least in my neighborhood, there are lots of people who are watering at the right times in the mornings because their sprinklers magically turn on when I'm running past their sidewalks in the morning. So at least my neighborhood's doing a good job with that. Next, we get to hear about our recommended 2022-2023 city budget and the proposed community investment program from our Director of Budget, Karen Rhodes-Whitley.
Good morning. This morning I'm going to present, it's basically the same presentation that we did the other day. Just one second. I'm not used to. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm not used to that. Anyway, the city manager did his proposed and recommended operating budget and community investment program. He presented it to the city council last Monday night. Right now, we're in the stages of having different town hall meetings and budget work sessions. We'll be doing that over the next couple of weeks. His budget, though, basically centered around 5 goals. We've had these same goals the last couple of years. To maintain our quality infrastructure, we have $2.8 billion in infrastructure here at the City of Plano, and we do have to maintain it. To take care of all our service demands, especially with public safety. To maintain our financial policies, we are a AAA bond-rated city. Being AAA, we always save money. When we issue debt, our interest rates are a lot lower. In addition, to make sure our property tax is affordable as we can have while maintaining our services, and then to take care of our personnel, which is our greatest assets we have here at the city. The combined budget resources, or the revenues for the city, right now totals $738 million. The number one is, excuse me, taxes for $328 million. This includes both property taxes and sales tax. Our number two is charges for services, and that's 33% of this piece of pie. The majority of our charges for services is going to come from our water and sewer revenues. The combined budget expenditures this year total $677 million. We now have a budget that owes over $1 billion. This, combined with our capital improvement program that I'm going to go over here in a minute, which totals $330, makes us over $1 billion now. The number one, and this has been going on the last couple of years, the number one expenditure that we have in the city is taking care of water and sewer. That's directly due to our North Texas Municipal Water District bill, that how we handle all our water and our sewer. That totals $185 million. The second is public safety, and it totals $178 million. The general fund, which houses most of the operations that you know us from, like libraries, all the public safety, parks and rec, totals $362 million this year. Our number one, or half this piece of pie, is definitely for public safety and health, and it totals $178 million. Our number two is non-departmental and our transfers fund. We do a lot of transfers, and that's how we maintain our capital maintenance fund. That totals $35 million this next year, and that's part of that piece of pie. Inflation has significantly hit the city. Just like everybody else, we have run into many supply chain issues, inflationary pressures. Within just the general fund alone, this is no other funds, we are funding over $2 million in inflationary hits that we've had this year. Let's talk about property taxes. We are still waiting. We have 2 counties. We are under the Colin County Central Appraisal District, and we are under the Denton Central Appraisal District. As of today, Denton still has not given us our final appraisal. I was hoping it'd come out today. So the numbers that you see here is based on final that we received from Colin the other day, and then an estimated on Denton. So these numbers will change. Right now, though, his recommended budget, we're going down 2 pennies to 42.65 cents. Right now, our no new revenue rate, which is you would collect the same amount of revenue as you did last year on the current property values, is 41.77 cents. And then our voter approval rate, which you can't go over unless you are going to have an election that allows you to go over, is 43.80 cents. Now, to come down to the 41.77 cents, $4.5 million would mean to be shaved out of the operating side of the equation. We are going to discuss all this with City Council on Monday night. The adoption of the tax rate is scheduled for September 12th. Your total assessed property values now have grown to $51.9 billion. Your taxable value this year, the change, new property, we have $573 million coming on, $3.7 billion is our existing property value change. Now, out of the existing property value change, the majority of it is on the residential side. Another way to look at this, if you look back in 2021, this is prior to COVID. Anyway, 2021, 53% of our taxes were coming in from commercial with 47 from residential. Since COVID, that has changed. Now we're down to this year, 51% is coming in from your commercial side and 49% is coming in from your residential. A lot of people always ask me, I don't understand, the multifamilies not paying taxes. They are paying taxes out of our $221 million property tax revenue. This is how your tax breakout is. Residential's putting in 49%, commercial is 39%, but multifamily is paying in 11.6%. Multifamily, they pay in through the rents that are being charged to the different renters. This is a look. This is staggering, I know. The average home value went up from $396,673 last year to $493,960. This is a 25% increase. It's happening everywhere in North Texas. These other lines over here, the city of Plano gives the majority, every exemption that we can give, we are giving. So the total exempted property is 12.4. Revenue savings from all these exemptions is $53 million. And we also offer the tax freeze for the 65 and over, and revenue savings on that is $6.1 million this year. This is a look where you take the average home value. In fact, we're going to have a publication the other day that is required that we have to put out in the paper. The Central Appraisal District gives us what our average home value is. We know the average home value has gone up to $400. These are the tax rates that are being proposed right now. Colin County and the College District have not announced what they're proposing yet, so this is actually last year's rate. At the end of the day, you calculate everything out, the total bill would be $8,871. I do want to make a note, this is on the average home. Once again, by law, they can only tax at that 10% increase. Let's talk about sales tax. We have wonderful financial policies at the City of Plano. One of the best ones that we ever adopted was our sales tax cap policy. Basically, back in the great economic recession of 2008, the City Council made a decision at that time that we would do a cap on sales tax. Anything that comes over this cap can go for one-time expenditures, go into our capital maintenance fund, can go to our reserve fund, can go to economic development. So it has changed over the years. Now we do a three-year cap, but we net out any audit adjustments. This year, though, we have added in, because the 3-year cap would have been really low, I think it was down to $95 million, we added in an inflation adjustment this year of 7%. So that's what's included in our cap. This is just a couple of the initiatives that they have funded over the years with the overage in the sales tax from the projection. We provided $25 million more into our capital maintenance fund, an additional 6.8 for economic development, and then several different, we bought the land that the fire training center and the police substation are currently being built on. So the policy has worked very well for us. This is a look at what we're projecting this year. We collected 92.5 last year, of course, during COVID. We did dip down to 86. This year, though, we're going to come in at $104 million, most likely. The 3-year cap plus that 7% adjustment has us coming in at $100 million, or what we're budgeting for next year. Just some budget highlights. There's no new programs or services. We're funded at 30 days of working capital. There is a 3.5% across the board salary increase that's going in here. We are providing an additional nearly $7 million for public safety programs. Library books is being funded at $1.4 million. CIP coming online totals nearly $1 million. Just looking at whenever you have a bond program, we had a very successful one as you were going through the building of the buildings and making the repairs and everything we do. We always announce that we're going to have CIP coming online. This is just an example of what that nearly $1 million pays for. Some budget information. Water and sewer, we are going to be providing, we have hired a rate consultant, we will be providing the final, what we think we need to go up on an increase for water and sewer, and at the end of the day, it's 9% for each one of them, water and sewer. I've had several homeowners association presidents call me about this, and I have told them, take what you used last year and just add 9%, and that's what you need to be budgeting. Once again, we will have final information regarding this next Saturday. Solid waste is going up $2 if you have a 95-gallon cart. This fund has been tremendously hit with inflationary pressure. The cost of fuel has gone crazy, and their equipment costs have gone crazy. Plus, we were plagued with staff shortages. So right now, we do have that programmed in. Just a look at your CIP. Once again, $330 million. The majority of this, $127 million, is going into street projects, followed by Parks and Rec and water and sewer. We will be issuing debt of $80 million to go ahead and still do our 2021 bond program that was passed by the citizens. And then a couple of key dates on the budget calendar. Monday, big night for City Council. We'll have the public hearing on the budget and CIP. We will have a presentation on the CIP. Then that night, the City Council will determine what the proposed tax rate is going to be that will be published in the newspaper next week. August 11th, it's a Thursday, we got a town hall meeting on the budget and CIP. We have an all-day work session scheduled on the 13th, including a grant funding schedule, and then September 12th, they go in and they adopt the budget and the CIP, and we most likely will have a public hearing on the tax rate, and October 1st, we begin again. All this information is included in the libraries. It's also included on our webpage, the internet, and we also have an open budget web portal that you can go in and see all the numbers and go into the details. Once again, I guess we're going to have questions now. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. All right, who has questions for us? Yes, sir.
Taking a big picture look at all this, how do we compare with our neighbors, other, like Briscoe and so on and so forth, just round numbers?
Are you talking about our budget?
budget.
Yes.
Yeah,
Do you want to take that, Mark, or?
well, actually, let's take it down one notch. Taxes. Okay?
Yes.
Because you talk a lot about that.
Yeah.
Sure. So part of, we're always looking at how we can, when we talk about affordability, oh, sorry about that. I guess, speak to the camera. Thanks for the question. We're always comparing to our neighbors on affordability. We realize that residents and businesses have choices in where they locate. And so we look at the taxes side of things, but it's important that we realize we're a service industry too. So those taxes aren't for just taxing for taxing purposes. They get turned around into programs and services. So we tie those two things together. Right now, we have the lowest effective tax rate of any city around us. So that's really important. We also have the senior tax freeze. So any senior that's 65 years or older has the ability to freeze their taxes at that exact dollar amount, regardless of what their property value does. So if their property value continues to increase and your bill was $800, your bill stays $800 as long as that freeze is in place. We also offer the maximum homestead exemption that's allowed by law. So 20% homestead exemption to be able to reduce that tax burden. And that's all done locally. We are when you're comparing other cities like Frisco, they're still playing catch up on that homestead exemption. They've been at 10%, they're like at 12.5% now. We're at the maximum 20%. Some of our other neighboring cities don't have a homestead exemption. When you look at all those things combined, we are the lowest effective tax rate of any of our neighboring cities. And we take pride in that affordability, but we also want to make sure that we're not just lowering that without talking about services. We also want the highest possible level of services that we can have. So when we talk about, our fire chief is sitting here, we have accreditations, 3 accreditations nationwide. So our ISO 1 rating, our CFAI rating, and our CAS rating, which is our ambulance and our fire policies and our actual fire response. And when you have those, we're one of 3 cities in the entire nation to have all 3 of those, and we're the only large city in the country to have that. But how does that impact you? That ISO 1 rating affects your insurance rates for commercial buildings and for your homes. And so it's not just to say taxing for the purposes of collecting money. It's how we turn around and program that to provide you services. We want great public safety. We want great roads. We want our gold medal winning parks department. We want a great library system. We want to make sure that in totality, it's not just that we're talking about taxes and everything else, but we have the best value for what we're providing. And that's really what council has asked us to do, is bring back the package that's going to keep Plano the city of excellence across the board. Absolutely.
Yoram.
You were talking about $493,000 average. Is that market price or assessed value?
That is the,
The $493,000 is the average home value. That is, yes, that is before your exemptions and all that's coming off.
Do you have the number for the average assessed value? Kind of, that would give us a hint of what happens next.
Yeah, I'll have to, the roll is like that thick. I'll have to go back and get it. But that I'm sitting here thinking about it, I'm pretty sure it's the total market package. They take the total values of all the homes and divide by the number of homes that we have here. But if you'll give me your information, I'll find out more and shoot you an email. I want to go back on the gentleman's question on the different cities, just to make a note. I know everybody's getting upset on water and sewer. We're going up 9%. Frisco's going up 12%. McKinney's going 10%. So actually, we're a little lower than them. The water and sewer rate increases are happening everywhere. Also on their solid waste side, all of them are passing along solid waste. That branch of service has really been impacted by the fuel and equipment costs, just to let y'all know.
Other questions? All right, well, we really appreciate you coming today, and there was a lot of great information here, and I know a lot of links to more information, so you will receive an email with this PowerPoint so that you have access to all of that so you can share with other people in your neighborhood. So thank you so much for being here, and we will see you next time.
to the mayor very soon here, very soon.
Sorry.
I'd like to begin with,
Let's move to item 2 then.
there we go. I'd like to begin with thanking the Team Plano for their dedicated work on the budget for fiscal year 22-23. Our employees are truly our greatest asset, and Team Plano met every challenge this year to serve the Plano community and keep Plano the city of excellence. During the budget process, I met with each council member to hear each member's priorities